Hey there, everybody. PT Pop here with all four lobes of my brain securely bound behind my back. And today I'm going to discuss customer satisfaction surveys. Stay tuned. When you call into a call center to speak to a call center representative about your utility bill, your cell phone, you'll get a question at the beginning of the call from a robot or an auto attendant. It'll say, "Do you wish to take a survey at the end of this call?" And you can say yes or no. And these days, you get them in your email. And this is an example of a survey that many customer service representatives get. Before I proceed, let me give a little background about these satisfaction surveys. A customer service representative in any call center is graded based off a variety of factors: talk time, which is also called handle time, or how long you're on the phone with the customer, how well you adhere to the time you're on the phone, how well you adhere to your schedule, coming back from breaks on time, leaving on time, going to lunch on time, things like that. You're also graded on the quality of service you give, whether you give good information or not, correct information, if you're friendly, if you're polite, if you're professional. One of the tools that they grade your performance on is the customer service satisfaction survey. And this is heavily weighted these days. So when you call into a call center, you'll get prompted via the auto attendant before the rep comes on the phone. They'll say something like, "Before we connect you with the next available representative, are you willing to take a survey at the end of this call? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no." And oftentimes you press 1 for yes. They'll either give you a survey after the customer hangs up with you, or the customer service representative hangs up with you, or they'll send you an email. And they'll often give you the opportunity to select email or call or so on and so forth. These questions that you answer, if you don't answer these questions for each customer service representative, like on a scale of 1 to 5, did they give you good service? If you don't give them like a 4 or better, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, usually on any one, if they get 2 that are less than a 4, they fail the survey and they fail the call. So in other words, this is what happens in a call center. You're scheduled usually monthly. Your representative is scheduled monthly to meet with their supervisor to talk about their calls and how well they're doing on the phones. So the supervisor will come over and either send them an email ahead of time saying, "Hey, Pete, I need to meet with you today. We're going to go over your calls." Or they'll tap you on the shoulder and they'll say, Hey, buddy, when you get done with that call, can you come over to my desk? We can go over a few calls. All right, buddy? And they're all real chipper about it, like, and you know it's not good, because usually they find something wrong with your calls, regardless, no matter how good you are. And they sit down with you, and what they do is the systems these days record the audio. They record the screenshots so they can see what systems you're navigating in and how long it takes you to get to different systems. And they listen to your voice inflection, how friendly you are, how professional you are, how long it took you to get to the correct answer, if you disseminated the information correctly, quickly, friendly, and professionally, all within 7 minutes. 7 minutes, for some reason, is the key goal in most call centers. 7 minutes is your talk time, your handle time. You're not allowed to be on the phone with anybody more than 7 minutes. So they'll listen to the call, and then they'll say, "Hey, we listened to the call. You did okay in the call." That's really kind of it's a passing call. It's on the borderline. You're like a C plus in this, but we also got a survey on this call that one of the customers filled out. And let's take a look at the survey. And they'll go through the survey. And even though you did everything pretty good on the call, it was a C or a B, the survey holds so much weight in the metrics on the call center that it could fail the whole call. You can get an F on the call if the customer service representative's satisfaction survey that the customer fills out is bad. And oftentimes what customers will do, they'll fill these surveys out and they'll say negative things about the company you work for, not the representative. They'll say, "Well, the representative did a good job, but your company sucks." And this has happened to me so many times where I've even had great calls where I've gotten A's and B's in calls, but the customer will say, Pete was great in the phone, but Verizon Wireless sucks because you guys don't have the iPhone. And it took me, 2 hours to get through to somebody. Even though Pete did a good job, I'm going to give you all ones on this survey because I hate your company. And that fails the call for me, which fails the chance of me getting a raise for the quarter and things like that. It snowballs. But they use this, it seems like they always use this as a way to push you back on the calls. So these customer service surveys, if you're not a call center representative and you've never worked in one, and you're watching this, and providing you're not some type of sadistic freak, I would, unless the customer service representative gave you like horrendous service, try to get them all 5s. So this is an example of a customer survey. So the company will start off by telling you, the customer, what the company is trying to do. We're trying to provide the best customer experience possible to better understand what's important to you. We'd like to invite you to give us feedback which will help us improve the call center experience. So they ask you to rate the call based off of very dissatisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, neither satisfied or dissatisfied, somewhat satisfied, very satisfied. And then they give you some basic, mumbo jumbo here. We appreciate your feedback and encourage early responses. The survey is only available for 7 days. Thank you. Customer experience team. These surveys are so subjective. This first question, how would you rate this telephone banker's level of sincerity in thanking you for your business? Now, what this is referring to is when you call into a bank or you call in to any call center, they train you these days to say, thank you for calling Huntington Bank. We really appreciate your service and your patronage. How can I help you today? And if you don't say something like that, they'll fail you on the call if they hear that in the audio recording. But here, I don't know how a regular customer who's just calling to get his balance is going to go, I don't even remember if he thanked me for my business. But then they say, the telephone banker had my best interest in mind. I don't know. It sounds like he did. If you had an opportunity to speak with this telephone banker again, would you? This is a ridiculous question because you very rarely, if ever, hear the same telephone banker ever again because there's usually 2 or 3 call centers for every corporation. How will you... Oh, yeah, I'd love to talk to her again. She had a sexy voice, man. Now, these questions are understandable. How would you rate the telephone banker in making you feel welcome? How would you rate the telephone banker's ability to understand your question or issue? How would you rate the degree to which the telephone banker was knowledgeable about Huntington's products, services, and or policies for which you were inquiring? You can kind of gauge pretty quickly whether the person you're talking to on the phone knows what the hell they're talking about. Oftentimes, more often than not, you're going to get somebody new because turnover is so high and you can tell that they're fumbling around and they're putting you on hold a lot and they're not certain what they're saying and they sound unsure of themselves. But, these are pretty solid questions. If you call in, the customer service representative greets you in a polite manner, understands what you're asking for, answers your question, and gets you off the phone fairly quick, and you're happy with that, give them an excellent. There's no need to give anything less than an excellent in the questions, surveys like this. This next series of questions says, we would like to know how the call center performed with respect to your expectations. But they go on asking questions about, was your question or issue, or has it been resolved? How satisfied are you with how your question was answered or issue was resolved? I don't know what this has to do with the call center itself. They're speaking, it's phrased as if you're speaking as the entity, the call center as a whole, as a whole thing. How do you expect the general public to go, you know what? This call center is really on top of things, Bob. Hey, Bob, you know what? Let's call this call center every day. I like talking to these people. They know what the hell they're talking about. Let's get a balance inquiry every single day at noon. All right? Sounds good there, Pete. I love this one because they're almost asking the customer to be reflective in his thinking. Thinking about the time from when you first spoke with Huntington's call center until the time you hung up the phone. Overall, how satisfied are you with Huntington's call center? Again, they're speaking about the call center as a whole, as an entity, as a group, not the individual. I think the entities and the people within the corporate world that come up with these surveys are delusional because they must sit there and think the customer's going to hang up. They're sitting back with their hand in their chin going, you know what, that call was pretty damn good. And that representative, boy, she was sparkling fine. You know, let me think about it. From the moment she answered the phone, I had warm fuzzies in my pants, and then when we hung up, I felt completely satiated. That was quite the call. Let's fill out that survey. Hey, Bob, I'm going to fill out that survey for Diamond. It's a good idea there, Pete. No, most people fill out these surveys after they've gotten really bad service and they're freaking pissed off and they're just going to let the company have it, let that rep have it. I mean, very rarely do people sit back and go, you know what? I just love that person I spoke to on the phone. This part of the survey just asks why you called, account inquiries, question about fees, things like that. Was this the first time you communicated with Huntington's call center about this question or issue? What that question is referring to is how many times the company wants to know how many times you had to call into the call center to get your question answered. But when I read that, I had called my bank in the past about other travel notifications because I'm going to be traveling here in a few days. So I let them know I'm going to be traveling so they don't shut my card off. I almost answered it no, which would have failed the call because the manager would have read it as they had to call in multiple times to get the one question answered within that day or that week. So it's really screwy. The whole thing is screwy. The whole customer service survey that you fill out or gets filled out when you're on the phone is part of your metrics, and a lot of places weigh it very heavily, and it can affect your entire score, and your bad scores or your good scores. Everything affects your pay increases. It affects getting time off from work. It affects getting promoted. It affects everything within the call center, and this is just part of it. And depending on the company you work for, it just depends on how heavily they weigh it. But at Verizon, it was very heavily weighed. And if you failed it, or they said Verizon sucked, not the rep, but Verizon sucked, it was your fault, because they would say to me, well, if they really had a good feeling about you as the customer service representative, they never would have said that on there. So if you had given them a good warm fuzzy, they never would have filled that out. And I'd say, well, the guy was mad at us because we didn't have the iPhone yet at Verizon. This is before Verizon had the iPhone. And everybody would call and be furious that we didn't have the iPhone, because they were all stuck on Sprint's network, which sucks. And so they would fail me on the survey because the company didn't have the iPhone. And my supervisor, Mr. Z Bop Bippity Bop, he said he didn't care. He said just if you had handled the call well enough, it wouldn't have mattered to them, which is total crap. So these surveys are insane. They don't have a good gauge on anything. They don't really gauge anything, because if a customer's in a bad mood and he just feels like reaming you on the survey, even though you gave a good call, you're going to fail the call, and it's going to screw you for the rest of the time, that quarter or that month that you're getting reviewed. So, if you like my video, give it a thumbs up, the snooter. Subscribe, and let me know if you have any other ideas for call centers, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye.